As coronavirus continues to infect millions across the globe, medical experts are searching for a cure. The World Health Organization says there are more than 100 vaccine candidates around the world. That includes one in development from Arcturus Therapeutics and Duke Medical School. Joe Payne is the president and CEO of Arcturus. Joe, great to have you here with us today, and thank you so much for taking the time. Let's start things off here. How does the vaccine work to protect people from coronavirus?
Sure. So the Arcturus vaccine is a messenger RNA vaccine. This is a subtype of the 100 vaccines that you mentioned. We have a special type of messenger RNA vaccine called self-replicating mRNA. And what this vaccine does is once it enters through an injection in the arm, very similar to your experience with the flu vaccine. Once this messenger RNA molecule gets inside the cell, it builds the S antigen, the spike protein. And that the spike protein is what you see on the surface of the coronavirus, those little spikes, and that's what we're making once it enters the arm. But because it's self-replicating, it continues to work for an extended period of time, like 2 to 3 weeks. So this means it's a potential single shot vaccine. And
Wow.
that you can understand of extreme importance when you're considering the logistical challenges of distribution.
And so Arcturus just released new data providing evidence for a strong antibody response from the vaccine. Can you dive some more into some of these findings for us?
Sure. So what you want to see in animal studies is what's called seroconversion. Right now, you and I do not have any antibodies that protect us from the COVID-19 virus. And after you get vaccinated, well, the whole point or the purpose of the vaccine is to create or invoke an immune response to build these appropriate antibodies. So not just any antibody, but the right antibodies, neutralizing antibodies. And if you see neutralizing antibodies in your serum, in your blood, then you've been seroconverted or seroprotected. We saw 100% seroconversion rate in our animal studies at very low doses. 100%, every animal tested. So this is very promising. And you couple that with the data that we shared today by press release, that it's very important that you invoke not only the right immune response, but that you also do not invoke the undesired immune response.
Right.
And that's the data we shared today. So we're checking all the boxes. And we'll go ahead.
No, no, no. And just to piggyback off of that and what you had mentioned earlier, because you've talked about the benefits of having a single shot vaccine, but when do you hope to begin human vaccine clinical trials, given the success that you've already seen on some of the other preliminary testing that you mentioned with the animals?
Well, we're in the process of scaling up the vaccine right now in what's called GMP manufacturing, and we aim to ship the material in June and initiate a clinical trial as soon as possible thereafter. What we've messaged as a public traded company is that we plan to initiate a clinical trial this summer. But the shipment of the material is going to, we're aiming to do that just next month. Now that we have this animal data behind us, and it's looking extremely promising. The dose is extraordinarily low, and so while I have your attention there, I think it's important to highlight why that's important. If you're in the business of dealing with a pandemic, this is not your normal disease or normal pathogen. In order to deal with large populations or for a vaccination process like this, you need to combine technology that gives you a very low dose and then also have a vaccine that's readily or easily manufactured. And that's what we have at Arcturus is in our animal models, we're seeing efficacy in extraordinarily low doses. Well, I talked about seroconversion at 2 micrograms. We saw even significant seroconversion at 0.2 micrograms. So we're evaluating a clinical dose of 1 microgram. So what does this mean? Well, 1 kilogram of our star messenger RNA technology would be sufficient to vaccinate 1 billion people. So 1 kilogram is about this large, okay? It's about 2 handfuls. So 1 kilogram or 1 liter of our technology can have a significant impact in this disease.
Wow. And so, just lastly, while we have you here as well, given that we're looking at a global response that's going to need to take place, if we are able to move through the human trials successfully, best case scenario, when do you think the vaccine could become even more widely available to people internationally, here in the US and globally?
Our first trial is going to be with 76 healthy volunteers in Singapore, actually. The government of Singapore has been funding this, and we're working under the guidance of the Health Sciences Authority there in Singapore. This is not their first rodeo. They've done this many times before, fortunately. It's not their first epidemic. They did MERS and SARS and now COVID-19. The HSA knows which corners to cut and knows which corners not to cut. And we're working with them to get this vaccine to be publicly distributed as soon as possible. The first phase of this is to evaluate the technology in phase 1 trials in 76 people, including the elderly. We're going to select a dose. And if the data is convincing enough, then they have the HSA has all the authority to have an emergency use authorization approval so that the vaccine can be distributed to first responders, the military, and whoever whom they have the authority to allow that. After that, usually or typically, there's a larger trial, either like a phase 3 trial with a larger amount of volunteers to help show that it's not only efficacious at a low dose, but it remains to have the nice safety profile that we anticipate. And then at any time in this process, the HSA can authorize it for public distribution. So it's their call is the short answer. It's not our decision. It's the regulatory agencies of the world. And the one working with is the HSA in Singapore.
Understood. President and CEO of Arcturus, Joe Payne, thank you so much for taking the time here with us today.